All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Our jurors are all present in People versus Robert Durst. Mr. Durst is present with Mr. Chesnoff, Mr. DeGuerin, Mr. Balian is representing the people. Need new batteries. Mr. Miata, Mr. Henderson, Mr. Milius, Mr. Lewin, and the detective has resumed the witness stand. You remain under oath.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to play the balance of this recording.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
What do you mean with Peter? I lost you on that.
Oh, he, and I think, yes, he and Kathy had gone to the police precinct to tell them that I had assaulted Peter Schwartz and kicked him in the head while he was sitting in our apartment drinking tea. I don't think I kicked him in the head. I think he was selling coke to Kathy.
Okay.
I got back at 2 o'clock Saturday night, grabbed hold of him, and the two of us fell down, and he hit his head on the corner of the desk.
Well, do you remember Ellen Tradesman?
Oh,
Kathy's friend Ellen Tradesman?
yeah.
So, and,
Surprised that she wasn't in any of this.
well, Ellen was there, and Ellen said that you had, that you had a fact, Bob, all...
Kathy.
Well, not Ellen, thank you, Kathy, thank you. Let me show you.
So you saying you never kicked Peter Schwartz in the... You didn't kick Peter Schwartz in
I did not kick him in the head.
Back to the apartment, and they were there, and just kind of not doing anything bad, but they were just there talking or whatever, and he was on the floor. My recollection is he was on the floor, like resting on his elbow, and Bob came in and kicked him in the face. And I guess it gets hazy after that, so I think we left, and he went to the emergency room. Peter went to the emergency room. He had like a cracked bone, put over bone in his face, and he was injured. But so it was the first time that I'd ever seen any violence from Bob. But it was scary. It was probably the first time I ever saw violence from anyone close to it like that. So it was alarming.
Is Kathy Tradesman saying that she was there when
Yes.
Peter and I had the fight?
Yeah, in fact, and I've got, let me show you when you look at Peter.
You're saying you don't think she was there? Are you saying she was not there?
No, she wasn't there. It was just
Well,
Peter and his wife and his wife's girlfriend, his wife's friend, and Kathy and me. There was nobody else there.
well, so, that's the injury that he had. Does that make, do you remember that or no?
I remember that he had this thing on his head, and he and Kathy went to the police precinct.
Did you think there was something going on between he and Kathy?
No, I didn't really know him that well. I mean, he was married,
Right.
A photographer,
Right.
and I never thought that he and Kathy were having an affair.
So,
Or
when
slept together or anything like that.
at
Can I
that
ask him something real quick?
Sure.
Did you go out to a club that night?
Yes.
Where'd you go? Do you remember
I
what
went
club?
to Xenon and then Club 50, Studio 54.
How about the Copacabana? Did you go to that club too? Copacabana? Did you go to that club that night?
I don't even like Copacabana sounds like something from when I was a little kid.
I was gonna say,
You didn't go to that
Before
club?
my time was Copacabana.
Okay.
not before Mike's time though.
No, well,
So when Kathy, at this point in the marriage, when Kathy was having her affair, whatever it was, did that really bother you?
Yeah,
Okay.
bothered me.
But you at the end of the marriage, at this point in time, you're saying Kathy didn't want a divorce, and you did. You wanted her gone. Is that fair? In terms of you wanted her out of the house.
She never wanted a divorce.
Right.
But she somehow had this idea that she could come on to people in front of me, and then I would just keep putting up with it. And I did put up with it for a little bit, and then it got to be too much. Did you speak to my friends, either Nick Chavin or Doug Oliver?
No, do you know why I didn't speak to him? Any guesses? I didn't. Do you know why I didn't speak to him?
No. They refused to?
No. Think about it. If I would have talked to either one of them, what's the first thing they would have done?
Call me.
They would have called you, and I didn't want you to know.
Okay.
So you knew, you knew that, that the New York State investigators were going back and looking at your case again recently, right?
Recently, in the last, we're talking about now?
Yeah, in the last 6 months, did you know that?
Yes.
So you know who they were doing that for? Any guesses?
I'm assuming it was Andrew.
No, they were doing it for me.
Ah,
So I didn't want you to know that we were looking at this case. You know, because I noticed it was very funny, interesting. What all the interviews of Mark and Andrew, there was one person that you seemed the least comfortable talking about. Do you know who that was?
soon Kathy.
Susan.
Susan, oh, yeah.
Yeah, you would talk about Kathy, you would talk about Morris, but you didn't want to talk about Kathy. And I was concerned that if you found out that I was looking at this case.
Yeah, I would have backed off, going to Cuba, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Who knows where.
And so, which kind of brings back, when were you planning on, so you said you were gonna flee, so back to what I said before, how come you are still here?
I kept putting it off. I kept making plans and making arrangements, and then just inertia.
Right.
To actually leave where I'm living and go someplace else. And, I mean, I've done this before.
No, so what made you, so it looks like you disappeared this week, you basically left your car. What was it that made you start to run this week? I mean, all the times, what was it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know why this week as opposed to last week, or
Right.
3 weeks ago, or 2 months ago. Why just right now that I decide, you know, I gotta do this?
You're not sure?
I'm really not very, very sure.
Well, even, so you've been taking all kinds of money out.
I always was going cash. I use cash instead of credit card.
Oh, no.
And also, I mean, cash is what I could buy things for. I mean, you know I was arrested with a revolver.
Yes.
Well, I couldn't walk into a gun store and buy a revolver, obviously. Same thing with the car and the license. I paid for it.
So where'd you get the latest gun?
For what?
So that you had a gun with you?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know about the revolver.
I do, so where did that one come from? Where'd you find that one?
A guy.
Oh, a guy, okay. So you know how to find a gun that's not
They were
traceable.
inmates, so people on the street trust me.
Right.
And I trust them.
So I wanna go back a little bit. So when Janine Pirro, you know, I know that the stuff came out and you end up leaving, and a big thing was that most people, if they found out that their wife's case was being reinvestigated, they would be, wow, I'm so glad somebody's really looking at it. What made you run?
See, I really can't say why did I run when I did as opposed to 3 days, 2 weeks, 4 months.
No, I'm asking you just period. I'm going back to October 31st, 2000, when you found out from Morty Matz, or from Wendy, that they had reopened Kathy's case. And your response to that was to leave. You got to Galveston, I think, on November 11th. You stopped using your cell phone. Hey, I gotta ask, what made you agree to let Mark and Andrew see all of your your stuff with your lawyers and your, you know, all the stuff with Susie Giordano that you said they could look at, why did you give them that stuff? I don't understand, that just boggles my mind.
I was trying to be, I just figured the way they made all good things, it made me not, it made me a sympathetic person, as opposed to a super aggressive person, which is pretty much correct. And I wanted them to see the whole thing and that they would see me as an acceptable human being as opposed to all this other stuff, and that I couldn't get them to see me as an acceptable human being if I was covering things up.
So you knew, so you basically told Susan, give them anything they want, your lawyer stuff, your...
Yeah, told Sarah the same thing.
You know, Bob, and I absolutely believe, it's very interesting, you know, when you saw, so all good things, you agree, presents you as somebody who's responsible for 3 murders, right?
Right.
Plus something else that really bothered you. What was the thing that bothered you most about all good things? You said it to Andrew. Do you remember?
Killing all the dogs.
Okay, so, but by the way, are you a dog person, right?
Yes.
I have a dog. I'm very much into my dog. If you go into my, you know, it's very funny. Well, it's not funny, but believe it or not, in me working on this case, you know, I have young kids, and my daughter was afraid. She said, "Hey, is he gonna hurt us?" I said, "No, he's not gonna hurt you." And then she said, "Is there any way that he's gonna hurt our dog?" And I said, "You know what? There's one thing about Bob that I'm very confident of. Bob loves dogs. Bob would never hurt a dog."
You're right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You like dogs, I think, much more than people. Is that right?
Yes.
So this is so by the way, when you're, this is my guy. I gotta find, so I gotta, can't really tell. That's my Great Dane.
Doesn't look that great there.
Okay.
But, yeah.
You know what? You're absolutely right. I'm gonna show you a better picture where you can see him. He's my boy. He is a. All right, you have a better picture here. Here we go.
That's a big.
170 pounds. That's my basset
It's
hound.
170 pounds.
170 pounds. He is my. You know where he sleeps?
I can't anywhere he wants.
You know it's true. Now you can get an idea. There's his giant head. He sleeps in bed with me. And I told my daughter, listen, Bob is somebody who, Bob doesn't kill because he enjoys killing.
That's what Cody Gonzalez says. If you back him into a corner, he'll kill you.
You planned out the killing of Kathy. It happened and you were stuck with it. You planned out Susan, planned out Morris. What happened with Susan is, you know, Susan told you that the police had contacted her, remember?
Yep.
And she told you, remember, who did she tell you contacted her? When you told this to Mark and Andrew.
Susan told me that she'd been contacted by Los Angeles detectives and New York detectives, and they want to come talk to me.
And if I asked you on a scale of 1 to 100, with 1 being I'm not sure she said it, and 100 being I'm positive, you would say
Said what?
that Susan told you that.
Yes.
100, right?
Susan definitely told me that she'd been contacted by.
I'm gonna tell you something. That wasn't true. They had not contacted her. They were planning on contacting her. They had never contacted her. Oh, you know what? That might have come out in the. Did you knew that before I just said it right now because it came out in the show, right? Has that already come out or no? I can't remember what's out in the show. Did you know what I just told you or no? Is that a new piece?
No, I did not know
Yeah.
that they had not contacted.
No, they had not they were planning on it. So I'm trying to figure out, why would Susan tell you that if it hadn't happened? I mean, any idea?
If the detectives had not called her,
They had,
then I do believe she was told by the reporters that the detectives are going to interview her.
she had not been, at that time, there's not a reporter that had contacted her. And no reporter knew what the police were doing. So what I'm telling you is, Susan lied to you about that. So I know it's not true. You just said Susan told me that the LA police had contacted her.
I think she used the word detective.
Yeah, LA detectives.
I was never sure whether it was the LA or the New York or
Right.
both.
Why would Susan tell you that? Any guess?
I can't guess.
Susan was trying to subtly squeeze you for money. You cared about her? I don't think Susan ever would have said anything.
I don't think so either.
She never would have. She never would have told anybody anything.
She never would have brought up anything like that. And yes, she was always telling me about her money problems, but she never, quote unquote, squeezed me for it. Bobby, if you don't give me enough money to do such and such, I'm gonna do such and such. I never heard anything like that from Susan.
No, and I'll tell you why I don't think you did. Susan was very smart, you would agree, right?
And she knew I would give her money.
But you know what had happened, Bob? You know, throughout the summer before she died, the last time you sent her money, before November, in November you said you sent her $50,000, correct?
2 checks.
Yeah, for $25,000
apiece.
And that was in November, right?
I honestly don't remember exactly when it was, but it was 2 checks separated by about 3-4 weeks, each for $25,000.
And you know that we have, we have the envelope that you were shown by Mark and Andrew. That's one of the checks, right?
Right.
And the letter, you like green pen. Why do you like green pen?
I liked it. It was different. People recognized, oh, it's Bob's handwriting. That was when the faxes first came in, and you couldn't tell the original
Right.
from the copy. So they were insisting that you sign documents in blue rather than black.
Right.
I was going to do it in green to be different. Everybody ridiculed it, but
One of my favorite quotes, again, that you had with Mark and Andrew, is you would say, they would ask, most people try to say how hard they work. And you would say, I would show up at noon wearing a jockstrap, high, and tell them the waste of a day is to do blah, blah, blah. And then you said, I would lord it over them, that I didn't have to do that because
I wasn't trying to make money.
well, you said because I was me. Is it fair to say that kind of in your life that you have kind of lived by your own rules?
Sort of. It's just that when I was in Vermont, we were all hippies, and I would wear what I wanted to wear. I didn't have to wear a suit and a white shirt and a tie with polished shoes. I didn't have to do any of that stuff. I could dress any way I wanted, and it was A-OK. Working in the family business in New York City, a whole bunch of lawyers and other executives dressing in the uniform that you dress in, it just wouldn't work for me not doing it, even though I am me.
Well, but you said that you said you would show up doing what you want. And what was interesting to me is you would say, I would lord it over them.
Yeah.
So I think you enjoyed basically kind of telling everybody, hey, I'm Bob Durst, I'll play by my own rules.
Right.
There's another quote that is amazing to me. I absolutely, hard for me to even imagine. But you'll talk about how, basically, how the rules do not apply. You talk about Vista. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And you'll say, there's a quote with Mark and Andrew, that you talk about getting food stamps. And you know why you said you did it?
I did it.
No, why? Well, you had more money, you didn't need it.
Oh, why did I say I did it?
Well, why'd you do it?
The only thing I can think of now is why not?
Right, you said you enjoyed heating the government.
Yes.
You also talk about being in an airport and just taking water, a thing of water. And you're like, I wasn't gonna wait in line. I mean, they're asking $3 for a thing of
It
water.
was the waiting in line. I'm at the airport now,
Right.
and it's 20 feet to the cashier.
Right.
Fuck it, I'm gonna take the water and leave.
Do you think, Bob, do you think that if you'd have been raised in a different, so you would agree that that's, so for instance, all of us,
I mean, I shoplifted since I was a little kid,
right,
so it was nothing
right.
new
But I mean, the reason that people don't, we're taught, hey, you can't steal, or you have to follow this rule.
I didn't have to follow the rule.
Yeah, and
Here's the line, you get at the end of the line, I'm thinking I'm not gonna get at the end of the line, and I've got other things I wanna do.
now, so do you think that the way you were raised, your family, the money, is that what kind of created that part of you?
Well, my siblings are not like that.
So another thing that I gotta say, the whole Asperger's thing.
I never thought that amounted to anything. That was the psychiatrist coming up with an explanation, and it was never necessary at the trial. We didn't need the psychiatrist.
Right, but Bob, you agree, that was a load of bullshit by the shrink.
Yeah, I read not that long ago that the American Psychiatric Association, whatever they call it,
Right.
who every year or every couple of years, they come out with a big book and they list different
Yeah.
ailments.
Yep.
And they deleted Asperger's from it because it was just such a all-encompassing thing that they didn't really think that there was any disease, if you will, that could be called Asperger's syndrome.
Well, it's the flavor, so on the DSM, they've now folded Asperger's, I think, into the autism spectrum.
Okay.
But what's interesting is, people that have Asperger's, that they're not able to, they can't like read the cues of people, they can't have conversations. And one thing they cannot do is, they can't deliver a line. Nobody delivers a line any better than you do.
Yeah, the thing with Asperger's is the intelligent people who don't get along or don't enjoy communicating with other people, and that is certainly me.
Well, you know what though? So to me, your issue with other people is not that you don't sometimes know how to interact with them. You're just going, I don't want to, I don't have to, I'm going to do what I want. I mean, agree?
Yes, but also in terms of reading the signals,
Yeah.
whether I should trust this person, or whether this person's lying to me, or whether this joke is funny or not. It's not something I'm good at.
Well, I got a question. Do you agree you're good at delivering a line?
Sure.
So there's a part in it, I don't know if you've noticed, but you're describing, one of my favorite things that you describe is you go, so I get arrested, and I say to the guy, what do I have to do to get out of here? And
I remember that real well. And
well, I love when you tell the story. Tell that one. I love that story. That's my favorite one.
what do I do to get out of here? Your bond has been set at $250,000. I said, so what do I do now? He says, do you have $250,000? I'm thinking $250,000, it's a whole lot of cash. Fill up a valise. I say, not on me.
And you understand that they had
You know,
no,
nobody is gonna say that.
no, but they had no idea who you were. They,
$250,000, that's what lots of people make over a big chunk of their life.
right. They were shocked when Cody tells the same story, and he doesn't deliver the line as good as you do. So it was funny when I was watching. I knew that you had some good lawyers, by the way.
I had great lawyers. I was right away picturing $250,000. That means 25 of those $10,000 envelopes. You need a small suitcase
Right.
or a big valise or
Right.
something. I went through my mind, 25 of those things would be like that. No, I don't have it on me.
Right, but nobody else, Bob, is going. People, when you're going, do you have $250,000? The cop who asked you that is going, well, of course you have $250,000. You're living in a $300 a month, room in Galveston. They had no idea. Hey, by the way, did you know? So I've gone through the Galveston thing, and by the way, you cannot be prosecuted for that murder again. You're aware of that?
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah. So the story, it's very clear to me that what happened was Morris knew who you were. You haven't disputed that,
I
right?
didn't hide it.
What's that? Yeah, no, and he knew who you were. And the problem with Morris was that Morris was pushy and a pain in the ass, and he was putting pressure on you to basically set him up, in a house with you.
Yes.
And you wanted to leave.
I was finished
Right.
with Morris, I was finished with Galveston, I was going someplace else for my life.
No, one of the things interesting, I got to know you, you're a very private person. Do you agree?
No, I don't have close friends.
Yeah. And so, I knew the Galveston story wasn't true when, as soon as I heard you say that you gave Morris a key to the place. I knew right there, you would never give him a key.
I never give anybody a key unless they were, very, very tight.
Right. So I knew. Second question. So you got away with that one. How did? When the verdict came out, do you remember what you said? You thought they said guilty, huh? Because you said, did they say not?
That was my little joke. Everybody reported that I was absolutely shocked. I would have been shocked if they come back and said guilty. I can't say that I expected them to come back and say not guilty, because a hung jury was what I expected. But I remember turning to Dick and saying, did they say not? And then turning to Chip and saying, did they say not?
So
That was me.
you were just kind of taunting the.
That's my sense of humor.
So obviously, the story about giving him the key, now that we know, that was bullshit.
I didn't give him a key, but he had a key. I was aware that he had a key.
Well, so here's what you said. You said that you gave him a key, and then you said that when he shot in the house,
Took the key away.
you took the key away. So let me tell you right now, I've gotten to know you well enough. There's no way you give Morris a key to your house when you're not there. You're a private guy. And you're not concerned enough, you don't care enough about Morris to worry that he can use your place when you're gone. You would agree that's not you, right?
I wouldn't let him use the place, but I was aware that he had obtained a key, and I never took it away from him.
Well, you had said that you actually said you took the key away from him, but you said that you thought he had copied it.
Seemingly.
Yeah, so you also said that he shot at the house. Is that,
Yeah, he
that's
shot.
not, he's gonna try to get us or not?
While I was in the bathroom, he shot the eviction notice, or said he shot the eviction notice, or said he shot at the eviction notice.
So, are you saying that happened?
Yes, that happened. I was peeing, and I heard a shot, and I came out of the bathroom with my prick in my hand, and he's got the gun in his hand, and he's pointing at the eviction notice.
Okay.
And he said either I shot at it, I shot it, whatever he said he did, and I took the key away from him.
Do you know that, by the way, when you're describing what happened with Morris, and you're talking about, the actual event, you testified that you came in and Morris had a gun underneath the
Yellow
sweater. And there was a struggle, and it was kind of weird because you argued both self-defense and accident. Do you know what I mean by that? So you're basically saying it was self-defense, but the gun accidentally went off.
It was self-defense. He had a gun. I tried to take it away from him.
Do you know that you told Sarah a completely different story?
What did I tell Sarah?
You told Sarah that you came home and Morris was there and you went and you retrieved the gun.
I retrieved the gun.
That's what you told Sarah. I don't know why the DA's office didn't call him. I know you must have known about that. You told Sarah this when he came to visit you in jail, but the DA's office didn't call him. I don't know why. Do you remember that or no?
I'm trying to straighten out my mind. Sarah says I told Sarah
Yeah.
that. Say that again.
Sarah
says I told
says-
Sarah when he visited me in jail.
He visited you in jail and you say to him, here, I'll get it a little more exactly. Was that for us, Lou?
No.
Okay.
I remember hiding the gun.
Yeah, you told Sarah that what happened is that when Sarah ended up, when you came home, here we go. So you said that here we go. One second. You said that when you came home, he was there, and you decided at that point you needed to get him out. He was not supposed to be there. You went and retrieved a gun. There was a struggle, and the gun went off. Is that what happened or no?
Yeah, I went back to the apartment after having stayed at the San Luis Hotel for most of a week. And Sarah was in Morris was in the apartment. And I told Morris that I wanted him out of the apartment and that he had to give me the gun. And then we had a fight.
But you told Sarah that you went and got the gun from another room. Do you remember telling Sarah that?
No,
I was trying to.
there weren't any other rooms. It was a studio with a
Meaning
bathroom.
Yeah, no, meaning you got the gun, you brought the gun out there to try to get him out of the house, out of the room. So, when Susan was trying to reach you over that summer before she died. She was trying to reach you to get money, and you weren't returning her calls. Do you know why?
I don't remember any such thing. I remember giving her money whenever she asked for it.
How much money do you think, by the way, do you still have your bank records? Did you keep your,
From 10 years ago?
oh no, it'd be
15 years
keep
ago.
them.
No, I don't save stuff like that. I mean, I have what went on my tax returns. You know, if there was something that was deductible or there was
Right.
income, I had given the information to the accountant.
But you didn't save them. I'm just trying to figure out, because Susan was telling people near the time she died, that she was upset with you because she couldn't find you, you seemed like you weren't returning your calls. She wrote you a letter. She wrote you a letter. Okay? What does that mean?
What's the time?
What's that?
Time. To go.
Um,
35.
How long do I have?
35 minutes.
I have 35 minutes?
That's what it is.
Okay. So, with Susan, when you end up, you flew out here to see her.
Out here.
Flew out to Los Angeles, I'm sorry, San Francisco on December 19th, right? We have you made the call for the plane. Right, you went to Eureka, you went to the Ford dealership, right? You picked up the car. And then the next day, I don't know if you know this, you made phone calls for Garberville. So where were you going? Why were you down there?
I remember what exactly I was doing in Garberville, and I tried to remember, and I really don't know.
You weren't going to San Francisco though, right? Because you had just come from San Francisco the day before, so that doesn't make sense.
I was going to San Francisco.
Bob drove down to Los Angeles, that you drove down there, and
Killed Susan.
I do.
Drove back.
and so the other thing is, you don't take red-eye flights very often. Did you know that?
Very infrequently.
You would agree, right? Almost never do you take a red-eye flight. Agreed?
Yes, yes.
So I was trying to figure out, and usually you don't buy your tickets right at the counter. Would you agree?
Usually I make reservations,
Right.
and
So what made you, so here's what's weird. You also had a pattern, which you've explained. You fly from from San Francisco to Eureka, New York, San Francisco to Eureka, Eureka back to San Francisco, back to New York. So on December 23rd, you end up buying that ticket at 10 at night at the counter in San Francisco. You didn't fly for Eureka, so why was it that you bought straight from San Francisco? Why didn't you go back to Eureka? What were you doing that made you get down to San Francisco? And why? It just doesn't make sense. I was just trying to understand that.
yeah, I hear you. I'm just not going to be able to answer that because I just don't.
Okay, listen, that's fair. But you agree, it's hard to explain.
Unusual.
Yeah, okay, listen, fair. So, and I couldn't even figure out why you were flying out. At that time, you already sold your house. So what made you take a 4-day trip? What were you doing out there? Do you remember?
I think I was wrapping up my affairs. I had sold the house.
Right.
I still had an office.
Right.
I still had a car. And I think I went out there to take my stuff out of the office. It was rented. And to sell the car.
Did you end up, what did you end up doing with the car?
I sold it.
Did you remember where? You sold it in Eureka, right? In whatchamacallit, in Trinidad, I think you got them. You sold the car in Trinidad, right?
I sold the house in Trinidad. I still had the car.
Okay.
I think I sold the car in San Francisco. I'm just not sure what I did with that. That was a Ford Explorer.
Right.
Green car. They don't make them anymore. It was an SUV with just 2 doors.
Right.
I just don't remember where I sold it, but when I went out to California, I I was wrapping up my affairs, taking my stuff out of the office and selling the car.
So-
I just don't remember where I sold the car.
But you agree it was very strange for you to be going out here. When you were asked about it, you said you were out here for a couple of weeks. But,
That's what I thought.
right, but you were only out there for 4 days.
4 days.
And you agree you didn't take 4-day trips to San Francisco back then.
Not from New York,
Right.
no.
Yeah. So as you sit here, it's fair to say you really can't explain it.
I can't explain it.
Hey, listen, that's fair. So when we get to the writing, you've been shown the letter and the cadaver note, and your response was when you saw it, I'm not going to show it to you, you know what you said, right? You remember what you said when you saw it. When Mark and Andrew showed you, right?
They asked me why somebody would do that. I said it's block letters, they're trying to disguise their handwriting.
Well, let me tell you what you said. What you said was, is you said, listen, first of all, you agree, as you sit here today, you agree that whoever wrote that letter, they killed Susan. Agreed?
See, I don't know that. I mean, maybe there were 2 people who killed Susan. It doesn't have to be one person, there could be 2 people. One person could go into the house to shoot Susan, and the other person could be the driver.
Okay, no, let me, this is what I mean. Whether the person was the shooter or the driver, whoever wrote the note was a part of killing her.
Yes,
You agree, right?
yes.
No question, right?
Whoever wrote that note had to be involved in Susan's death.
Okay, so, and you know, you looked at it, and when you look at that writing, Bob, it's, your comment was, it's block lettering, it's like a typewriter. You know that writing is not like a typewriter. I've had the experts look at it, and you know what they came back with? And I'm being very honest with you, I can show you the handwriting report. Do you want to see it?
No.
Well, so here's what they said. Do you know what they said?
They said, look, this looks just like this, and this looks just like this, and the chances are 99% or 95 or...
No, they didn't even, Bob, they didn't even go, here's what they said. They said you wrote it. They said no question. So look, this is the handwriting. One of these is the one you wrote to Susan before, and one of them is the cadaver note. Can you tell me which one of these you didn't write?
I couldn't begin to.
Yeah, because they look identical, agreed?
If not identical, extremely similar.
So would you agree that there's no way that somebody could just randomly write that way? So either, you would agree, either you wrote both or somebody forged one of them. Would you agree that would have to be the explanation? No?
I've seen what these writing examples mean. I've seen a friend of mine, a lawyer,
Yeah,
showed me things that are not the same in both of them.
right?
I mean, look at the end in Benedict and then the other end. They don't really look very similar at all, just looking at the ends. So I would agree that they look very, very, very similar.
Well, let me just ask you though on this. Do you agree that either you wrote both of them, that's one, you agree that's a possibility and that's a fair,
Possibility.
and that's a, when you look at it, that's a fair thing for somebody to think, right? That's reasonable. Reasonable, right? Okay, so the other possibility, which could be that one of these, somebody was trying to forge and copy your writing. Would you agree? That could be a
That's
possibility.
a possibility.
Okay, here's the problem. When you look at the writing, what the experts can say is when you trace it, that's what it's called. You're really drawing, you're not writing. You can tell when somebody traces it. Both of these are what we call naturally executed. So you wrote both of them. You wrote both of these. And the issue is gonna be, there's kind of two choices that you have, two ways you could go. You could say, listen, I went down there, and you would have to explain why you went down there.
Yeah. I mean, I saw that and the people's comments and the stuff like that.
What do you mean
Somebody
people's comments?
could have gone into the house and saw that Susan was lying there.
Right. And you agree that that did not happen. You did not drive down there and find Susan's body, even though you were not the
I
killer.
don't agree to anything like
Okay.
that. I mean,
Okay.
that's evidentiary.
Okay, so you don't want to answer that? No, what I'm telling you is, I'm just saying, that did not happen. You agree, you did not just find Susan's body and somebody else killed her?
I did not find Susan's body.
Okay, so what it means, and I told you, have I been, from what you can tell, does it seem like I've been pretty honest with you and pretty
Yes.
fair? Okay, so here's where I'm at. I am very confident, Bob, that what's gonna happen is you're gonna be charged with murder. We're gonna bring you back to Los Angeles. By the way, do you think you'll fight extradition, or do you think that you'll come back willingly?
I'm gonna do whatever the lawyers tell me.
Okay, and listen, and that's fair. And listen, I appreciate you talking to me and listening, hearing me out when you didn't have to. I mean, you know, I appreciate it. We're gonna bring you back there, and we're gonna try you. And what'll happen is that we will include Kathy's murder in this and Morris's murder in this. Did you think the Galveston DAs were very good?
No. And I have about 6 reasons why I got acquitted. The first one is I had the best lawyers in the court.
No question.
The second one is that Cody Gonzalez turned the jury off big time.
Right.
He walked around that courtroom with his chest out and his badge and gun out.
Right.
And made it very apparent to everybody that he thought this whole thing with the jury and the judge and everything is a waste of time. I'm Cody Gonzalez. I say he did it. That's all you need. That's
2.
yeah.
What else?
The Galveston DA, Mr. Sistrunk,
Yeah.
was pretty good, but his assistant,
Who's the mumbler? Which the guy that mumbled? It's the other one, right?
Joel,
I couldn't understand a lot of what they
couldn't
said.
understand what he said, and he was just so totally wrong about so many things that was another big reason in my mind why I got acquitted.
What about number 4?
Let me see if I can get to number 4. Is that the jury essentially believed me, or if they didn't believe everything that I said, Sistrunk wasn't really, and Sistrunk had turned most of it over to Joel, whatever his name
Right.
is, and Joel had done terrible job.
Right. What about number 5?
I don't know anymore, but there was 6 things which I thought resulted, and this might be number 1, everybody thought that I was going to get up on the stand and go bananas. I killed her, I wanted to do it, kill him.
Like Jack Nicholson in what's that movie? You know the man I'm talking about, goes, "You can't handle the truth."
I remember that.
Yeah. So they thought that's what you were going to do.
They thought I was going to freak out.
Yeah. Now, listen, you were brilliant on the stand.
And
I will tell you what-
Sistrunk thought I was going to freak out, and I think even my lawyers thought there was a real good chance that I would freak out.
How much? Hey Bob, how much of what you did on the stand was you, and how much of it was them kind of helping? In other words, did you do that all yourself? That was brilliant. I mean, I got to tell you, it was brilliant.
No, I mean, I went over what happened repeatedly,
Right.
and the jury consultant, Robert Hirschman,
Yeah.
he said, you can't say things like that. And I had just said that, well, I'm a millionaire, I don't have to work, I get up most mornings and smoke pot. And he said, our jurors are not millionaires. Our jurors don't get up every morning and smoke pot. You can't walk in and say that. just don't say it. There's no reason you should say it.
Right.
Don't say it. It's going to turn everybody off.
You know what you didn't say about the reason that you, it's funny, when you talk about Galveston, like, you'll be asked, you talk about it when you're explaining what happened. You'll say, what was my defense? How was I going to beat the case? You don't, when you talk about it, you don't talk about it like, this is what happened. You talk about it like, how did I beat it? In other words, when you're talking, you know what I mean?
You know, that's Michael Jackson's thing. Beat it, beat it, beat it. That's how I felt about it.
No, but what I mean is, Bob, is that, so it's a difference between somebody saying, hey, this is what happened, and I told my story of what happened, versus, this is what I decided to say that was gonna beat the case. You talk about how self-defense, you'll say, in Texas, there are very few things you cannot do to somebody who, you know,
Find in your house.
in your house. You say you're not supposed to shoot them, but there is a big case where it happened from long distance with a rifle. And when you're talking about, though, you don't sound like you're talking about, hey, this is what happened. You sound like you're talking about,
What should I say?
what should you say? I mean, do you agree that's what it sounds like?
And to some extent it is. As
Yeah.
I just said, I can't say on such and such a morning,
Right.
I got up and I got stoned and I went out. And
And by the way, when you talk about dismembering Morris and you say how stoned you were, etc., there's a line that you say. How much time do we have, Mike?
Oh, about 15 minutes.
Okay. There's a line that you say, let me find it. Hey, by the way, Bob, have you better talking to us, right, than being out there? You haven't minded having this conversation with us?
I haven't minded, excuse me, at all.
I'm just looking for it. You had a very interesting comment that I want to find here. Okay. When you listen to this, Bob, you sound like you say, well, I decided to wait until I would pick it up and carry it out. And then I realized I wasn't picking up that body and carrying it anywhere because it was much
Heavy.
and you stopped yourself. I think what you were going to say was it was much heavier than Kathy. Listen for a second. Listen for a second.
So when you decided to do that,
Can you hear?
I decided I'd wait till night and then pick it up and carry it out of there. And then I realized I wasn't picking up that body and carrying it anywhere because it was much on me. I wasn't strong enough to do it. I could drag it out, but I just couldn't see. And then I thought about putting it in a sleeping bag or something and dragging the whole thing out, but good God, that's ridiculous. So instead, I decided it wasn't till the next day when I went, I can't just drag it out, that I'm going to have to dismember this body.
So, you said that you were really drunk and really high, etc. But you know, you went to Walmart and you got the money orders to pay Morris's rent in advance for a long time. Do you remember doing that?
Sure.
So that says to me that you clearly had to know what you were doing. That's a smart move because you did not want people to find out.
I did not want the landlord, Klaus
Right.
Dillman, to go to the house and say to Morris, where's the check?
Do you know what? Tell me, how did you, so by the way, cutting somebody up with a saw is a really difficult thing to do.
I agree.
And you've done that now twice, correct?
I'm not gonna go there. I
Okay,
did
okay,
it
okay, all right.
Once.
Okay, I gotta ask. You were able, if you know that the way the body was cut, somebody knew how to cut the joints.
You see, I don't know that. Subsequently, I've been told that a surgeon would cut up a body the same way you do a chicken. You go into the joint and you cut around the joint to get rid of all the ligaments, and then the thing comes out. You're not going to go and try to cut through the goddamn bone like I did, which was hard.
Well, you did a pretty good job. The thing that
Cutting through a bone is not easy with anything.
no, it's definitely not easy. It's definitely not easy. I don't think you were drunk. I mean, I think you knew what you were doing. You didn't cut yourself, right? I mean, you were able to get this
I
done.
don't remember if I cut myself or not, but I know that cutting up that body the way I was doing it was the hard way. The proper way is what a surgeon would do with a scalpel, and he would cut around the ligaments and then do it in the joint, not on the bone.
Would you agree, Bob, that somebody who could dismember somebody like that, you can understand why we would suspect you of having
Yeah,
killed
that's
you?
what Kathy, Mother, and what Gilberti, and I'm sure the other ones think. I get it, Kathy.
So I would like to, are you willing to continue? You're going to be going to court right now.
I'm going to court.
Yeah, this morning, I was hoping we could talk to you along, but they have to get you to court. I would like to talk to you afterwards. It's up to you if you're willing to talk to me or not. You know, it's like I said before, this is all voluntary.
No, I hear you, and I have no problem with what you're saying.
Okay.
No, I wasn't gonna go back to get after the $250,000. You guys, or at least what I saw on the arrest warrant, was that you had said bail at $1 million.
Well, no.
And I had said to the fellow, if I give you $1 million now, you can let me go. And he said, no, we're charging you as a fugitive. I don't know why that says $1 million.
Yeah, it's so I can tell you that today you're not gonna, and you
If
understand.
you told me something else, I don't know that I would believe you.
No, listen, and I've been, honestly, Bob, you'll go back. Have you caught me in any lies today during our conversation? Have you seen any lies that I've said to you about anything?
No, I'm not aware of any.
But so, I would like to talk to you, when you come back in court today. That's gonna be up to you, what you do. I don't know whether there'll be a lawyer there today. I don't know what that lawyer is gonna tell you.
He's gonna tell me to shut my mouth, of course.
Well, and this one I'll tell you, you have every right to listen to your lawyer and to do what your lawyer says. I think you know that you've already told me, you've talked enough. I have enough now. What I want to talk about when we get back is I want to find out what is it that we can discuss where I can get the truth about some of the things that you've said you couldn't really answer for me. But you have told me, correct, that there is, you know what I want, correct?
Yes, you'd like some details from me if I knew
Yes.
about where Kathy's body is.
And about what happened to Susan. Those,
And about what happened
okay,
with Susan.
and you would agree that you're in the position, if you want, to tell me more than you have so far?
About that, I'm not about to go that far.
Okay,
But
but wait a minute, because you're telling me though, that I want to understand when you're saying, tell me what,
well, you asked
I
me
would
what I
agree.
thought you wanted to hear. I think what you wanted to hear to make Ann McCormack happy is, what did you do with Kathy?
right,
And I think you want me to go through details of Susan.
I do.
Okay, so now, what would I ask for?
Tell me,
If I tell you those things, I'm pleading guilty.
okay?
And I'm pleading guilty, I'm gonna be going back to Los Angeles, to California, and doing my time.
So listen, it's gonna be up to you, and it's ultimately your decision. I'm gonna come back after your arraignment today, whatever they're calling here, it's not really an arraignment, but, at this point in time, you are willing to talk to me after you come to court today, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and I'm willing to come back, and I want to tell you something else though, and maybe it doesn't mean anything to you, and you can tell me. does it, forgetting about yourself for a second, does it mean anything to you that you can give some answers to people that does that mean?
I'd love to make Ann McCormack happy.
Okay. All right, let's talk, do you have any more questions for me? Anything I can tell you that right now before you go to court?
No, I've put it out there. Well, you see, right now,
Yeah.
my criminal lawyer in Houston and the criminal lawyer in New York
Yeah.
are undoubtedly talking to Los Angeles lawyers.
Right, to try to who you're gonna get.
Well, we had more than 20 calls from Los Angeles lawyers, not me, my lawyers did, about representing me.
Oh, you mean since the Jinx has come up?
Yes.
Well, listen, so here,
When we sit down to do an agreement, and I would expect by Monday I will have chosen a lawyer in Los Angeles, he is gonna be the one, who says to me that this is...
well, Bob, here's what I can tell you. My interest right now is in talking to you and in going through this with you. You know your lawyers are gonna tell you, don't talk to me. Don't do this. And your lawyers are gonna bill you for, for what they're doing. So my question is, and you tell me, is it worth either continuing to talk right now, maybe we can delay court for a little bit of time, I'm trying. Is it worth talking? So here's what I'm looking
See,
for.
I'm not about to say to you, what is your name again?
John.
John. I'm not about to say to you, John, this is it without my lawyer.
Okay. Well, listen, and that's your right.
That should happen by, today is
Well,
Sunday.
wait.
It should happen by the way.
But let me be clear with you. Are you saying, if you tell me right now that you want to wait for your lawyer, I cannot speak to you anymore? That's absolutely your right. Is that what you're
I'm
saying?
telling you that I
Okay.
want to wait for my lawyer
Okay.
to talk.
You're just saying, I'll talk to you. So are you willing to talk to me after court today?
Sure.
Okay, then that's what we'll do. All right, hey, last thing, just as you're thinking, Bob, will you do this for me? I know you're concerned about yourself, and I understand that. I think you actually care about some of the other people involved, and I'm hoping that there's a part of you in there that is saying, you know what, I can't undo what I've done in the past, but I can try to, I don't have many years left. Will you at least think about that?
Sure.
Okay, all right, we'll head to court.
Detective, at one point during that interview, the defendant was shown two documents and asked if he could tell which one he wrote and didn't write. You know what I'm referring to?
Yes.
Okay. And was one of those the envelope that Sarah had provided, and was the other document a copy of the cadaver note in this case?
Yes.
Okay.
Speak right into the microphone.
Sorry, sir.
Does this audio tape that you just heard in open court right now, with the exception of the parts that were redacted out pursuant to the court's orders, was this a full and complete and accurate recording of everything that was discussed between yourself, Detective Whalen, Mr. Lewin, and the defendant on that particular day?
Yes, sir.
And other than what appeared on that audio tape that you just heard in court, were there any other interactions between either yourself, Mr. Lewin, Detective Whalen, and the defendant?
No, sir.
Okay. And you didn't have any other conversations with the defendant other than this one, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, and that would include with yourself, Mr. Lewin, Detective Whalen, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Chesnoff, you may cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Detective, you hold the record for being on the stand and not talking. I'll try to keep it short for you as well.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Sir, besides the tape recording, was there a video of this made?
There was a video from the prison.
I'm sorry, I couldn't...
There was a video from the prison,
Yes?
and we got a copy of it.
It had no sound, was that?
That's correct, sir.
So it was just a film that showed the interaction between Mr. Lewin and Mr. Durst, correct?
Yes, and it has myself and my partner sitting there.
Right, and that was the other detective that was present was named Whalen?
That's correct.
Okay, he's your partner?
He was.
Okay, so you've been a policeman since 1993, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And when did you become a detective?
December of 1999.
And you got assigned full-time to this case in 2015, just before the warrant issued?
Yes, in January of 2015, I was assigned to the task force.
And you were the person that swore out the affidavit to the judge to get the warrant issued, correct?
The
Ramey
Ramey warrant, yes.
The Ramey warrant is a California court term for the type of warrant you got, correct?
For an arrest warrant, yes.
And of course, when a warrant's issued, it's a secret, correct?
It could be. I mean, depends on how you want to pursue the investigation. You can always have a news conference and say that you are looking for someone and that you have an arrest warrant.
But in this case, the public was not aware that you had gotten the warrant, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And that would include Mr. Durst, correct?
Yes, sir.
So when he got in his car in Houston, Texas, and began driving to New Orleans, he had no knowledge that you were actually looking for him, did he?
Well, based on the phone records, he was already gone by the time I got the warrant.
But he didn't know that there had been a warrant for his arrest, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, he was not aware that officers from Los Angeles were flying to Texas and to Louisiana, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, now, Mr. Lewin was in Los Angeles at the time the warrant issued?
Yes, he was.
Okay, and once the warrant issued and you went to Texas, are you the person that called Mr. Lewin and told him that you had tracked Mr. Durst and knew where he was?
No, I was not in contact with Mr. Lewin at that time.
Okay, did somebody from your group contact Mr. Lewin and advise him that Mr. Durst was in custody?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay, and Mr. Lewin made arrangements to immediately fly down, correct?
He did.
Okay, and did you pick him up at the airport?
Yes, we did.
Okay, what time of day was that?
It was around 6 in the morning, just before 6 in the morning.
Just before the interview?
About 40 minutes before, yes.
Okay, so when had you left Houston?
I will say late in the afternoon of the March 14th.
Okay, so you get in after he's arrested or before he's arrested?
After he gets arrested.
Okay, and do you have contact with the FBI agents that arrested him?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and at some point in time, do you get to go to sleep?
Not that night.
So you were up all night,
That's correct.
okay? Because at that point in time, you wanted to get an opportunity to see Mr. Durst before he went to court the next day, correct?
We wanted to talk to him before he went to court. However, we didn't know they had court on Sunday in New Orleans.
But in fact, he did have court, correct?
Yes, he did.
Okay, and so you picked Mr. Lewin up at the airport after having been up all night, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you go to the facility where they're holding Mr. Durst, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Is that in the same building that the court's in?
I don't recall if it was, but it was close by.
Was it, I'm sure you've been to a few jails in your career. Was it an older facility?
It was.
And when you got there, who did you make contact with at the jail to arrange to speak to Mr. Durst?
You most likely was the watch commander.
And a watch commander is a person who's in charge of the particular shift at the time you get there, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And you said, look, I need an interview room, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And you knew that Mr. Lewin, you were going to pick him up and you were going to go there and Mr. Lewin was going to interview him, correct?
No, we actually, all three of us got to the prison, and we worked together when we were making the arrangements to talk to Mr. Durst.
Okay, but you knew that Mr. Lewin was going to conduct the interview, correct?
At that point, yes.
Mr. Lewin, and in your career as a homicide detective, I'm sure you've had multiple experiences attempting to speak to people you've arrested, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, in the course of your career as a homicide detective, is this the first time that it was actually a district attorney who did the interviewing?
Objection relevant, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Well, you're not a lawyer, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, Mr. Lewin's a lawyer, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, have you ever been in a case where you didn't interview the suspect?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Where he did not overrule. So where someone else did the interview.
Yes, I had cases where I had another detective do the interview.
Right, but never a DA,
Same
right?
objection.
Sustained.
Okay. In the cases that you've been in since your career began as a detective, has there been an instance where someone other than a detective interrogated your prisoner?
Objection and 352, and I'd like to approach.
No, objection sustained.
Can the court, can the court advise counsel he's asked the same question 4 times to move to another area?
No. No, that's fine, but that, I sustain your objection.
Now, you mentioned a little while ago that this was a sealed warrant. So now it's 6:40 in the morning by the time Mr. Durst arrives, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. Durst, the first thing that he expresses to you and Mr. Lewin, the district attorney who's present conducting this interview, is that he's cold, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And he added,
I think he needs to get him some water.
you all right? You need a break? You good? Mr. Durst expressed to you that he is cold, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And so you proceed to get him a blanket, correct?
It actually was a jacket.
Okay, you get him coffee,
He did.
okay, and he was appreciative of that, correct?
I believe so, yes.
He even expressed to you, it's better in the room with you fellas than it is back where he was, correct?
At one point, yes.
Okay, and this is in this old jail that the 72-year-old gentleman has been housed in for the night, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, as the homicide detective assigned to the case, you get to examine all the evidence that's available in order to try to solve the crime, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and in the course of all the years that you've been involved investigating this case, other than the note that was found at the house, there was no forensic evidence found linking Mr. Durst to the shooting of Susan Berman, was there?
Not to my knowledge,
Okay,
no.
not a fingerprint, correct?
That's correct, sir.
No DNA, correct?
Yes, sir.
No hair, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you've had all this time to examine everything in the case. There have been other detectives that have been in charge of the case, and there has been absolutely no scientific evidence connecting Mr. Durst to Susan Berman's murder, correct?
That's correct.
And there's been no scientific evidence connecting Mr. Durst to Kathy's disappearance, correct?
That's correct.
Now, at any point in time as the homicide detective in this case, did you ever suggest to anybody that because it's a cold case, maybe we should exhume Ms. Berman's body and look for evidence?
I believe it was suggested at the beginning of the investigation by Detective Chamlin, but it was not done.
Do you know whose decision it was not to do it?
I believe the evidence they were looking for was already collected prior to the burying the body, so there was no need to exhume the body.
Well, you just told us there was no evidence found with the body of a scientific nature. So who made the decision not to exhume the body?
Objection relevant.
Sustained.
body was never exhumed, correct?
Correct.
In cold cases, they exhume bodies, don't they?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence and relevance and frequency also outside the scope.
Overruled.
All of them?
Yep.
It will depend on the investigation, sir. Not every investigation will require for us to exhume the body.
Okay, but in cold cases, bodies are exhumed, correct?
Sometimes, yes.
Now, you spent 2.5 hours with Mr. Durst, correct?
Yes, sir.
And for a homicide detective, getting to spend 2.5 hours talking to the person you just arrested for a murder is kind of a coup. It's a good thing, right?
Sometimes it is, not always.
But 2.5 hours is a long time to spend with somebody in a jail. That's cold, that's old, that's just described to you the number of ailments that they have, correct?
Well, it depends on the interview, sir. Sometimes it will take longer. Sometimes you don't need to talk to someone for 2 hours to get what you need.
Well, do you know that when you get brought to court for an arraignment, that if you can afford a lawyer, you'll have one, and if you can't, someone like His Honor will appoint a lawyer to represent you? You're aware of that, correct?
Yes, I do.
So you knew that once that interview was over, Mr. Durst would be in a courtroom where someone would protect him by appointing or giving him a lawyer, correct?
Objection relevance also outside the scope.
Overruled.
I knew that we couldn't talk to him without his attorney present.
Well, you didn't actually talk to him at all, did you?
Probably asked him a couple, not really, sir.
Okay, so you and Detective Whalen maybe asked 3 or 4 questions, and Mr. Lewin asked the rest, correct?
That's correct.
Do you know what the words that Mr. Durst used, swooped or speeding, means?
What's that again, sir?
Mr. Durst used 2 phrases when he was being interrogated. He said he was swooped and he was speeding. Do you know what those mean? In street terms, that you're either using methamphetamine or...
I would have to look at the whole part of the conversation to determine what he meant.
Okay, but have you ever heard those phrases before?
I probably have.
Okay. After court, Mr. Durst didn't speak to you again, did he?
No, we did not get a call from his attorneys trying to set up a meeting.
Excuse me. Okay, so I believe that Mr. Lewin was asking Mr. Durst about his interviews with Jarecki and Smerling. I'm trying to put in context the speeding and the swoop. And Mr. Lewin said, so your condition during those interviews, it's very clear that you understood the questions, that you understood the answers. So you know, I mean, you can say that you were on drugs and didn't know what was going on. I can tell you, I mean that one. That one won't work. That's Mr. Lewin. You know, it's interesting, go ahead. And Bob answers, I'm not trying to say that my answers were wrong. I'm just trying to say that I was, and then there's a multiple goo during the thing, right. I think that what I said was the correct answers to the questions, but we were talking before about why did I do it anyway, says Mr. Lewin. And Mr. Durst responds, and I think the reason I did it had to be because I was swooped, speeding. Do you understand in that context what Mr. Durst meant?
Yes, sir.
What do you think he meant?
He meant that he did the interviews because he was high, but he was still telling the truth.
I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Very briefly.
All right.
Detective, are you aware in this case that the defendant has stipulated to writing the cadaver note, thereby being in that house and finding the body?
Yes, I did.
And notwithstanding that fact, there still was no forensic evidence of him being in the house?
It's not uncommon for not finding any fingerprints or DNA or hair at a crime scene. Sometimes you find it, sometimes you don't. It depends on the type of crime. If you have, for example, if you have a fight between the victim and the suspect, you may find hair, DNA, or other type of physical evidence at the crime scene.
And as far as you're aware, was there any evidence in this case that suggests there was a fight between Susan Berman and her assailant?
No, sir.
In fact, she was just shot in the back of the head from behind, right?
That's correct.
Is it surprising to you that there was no forensic evidence found in this crime scene based on your background and all the murders you've investigated?
No, it wouldn't be the first crime scene that I investigated where there is no DNA, fingerprints, or hair samples collected.
It wouldn't.
It would not be.
And you indicated that the body was not exhumed in this case, right?
That's correct.
That means taken back from the ground, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how many years had passed approximately from the point where she was buried till when the LAPD started their investigation again?
Close to 12 years.
Okay. And what would you expect to find after 12 years?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll rephrase.
Yes?
First of all, did the defense ever make a request of you to exhume the body?
No, sir.
You're aware that, like the prosecution, the defense can make a request to exhume a body, correct?
That's correct.
And that request was never made prior to right now?
To my knowledge, no.
Do you see, based on your background, your experience, your training as an LAPD officer, any reason in this case to exhume Susan Berman's body?
No.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Lewin advised against exhuming the victim's remains
That assumes,
due to the
that
passage.
assumes facts, not an
I'm not
evidence.
finished with my
It
question.
is an objectionable question.
Stop. I am going to sustain the objection.
Your Honor, can the court instruct the jury to disregard?
No, I'm not. Don't ask for instructions in front
May
of
we
the jury,
approach, please?
No. The objection sustained. Next question.
In every case where they exhume a body, it means the body has been in the ground, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, and it can be for 1 year, correct?
It could be for a few months.
It could be for 30 years, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so how long the body is in the ground is not determinative of when someone gets exhumed, because homicide detectives and district attorneys in cold cases exhume bodies, correct?
Your Honor, that assumes facts, not an evidence, also calls for expertise, which is not condemned.
Overruled. He can answer.
It will all depends on what type of evidence you're looking for.
Okay, so if you're looking for scrapings under someone's fingernails, a scientist will tell you that even in a body that has been in the ground, you can still find that, correct?
It will depend on how long the body had been on the ground.
Well, the only way to really know is to do it, correct?
It will be, however, on this case, nail clippings, I think they were collected prior to, during the autopsy, or when the body was picked up.
Do you remember? You're telling us that there were scrapings done originally?
I will have to look at the murder book, but I could verify for you.
I
sir.
have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, anything else?
Maybe I will.
Okay, we'll see. We're narrowing the scope, though. This is a funnel. Fewer and fewer questions.
Yes. Just so we can understand what we're discussing, scrapings under a fingernail, we're talking about taking samples underneath the victim's, the decedent's fingernails, right?
That's correct.
And that's used to potentially later test it for DNA, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's used to potentially see if the victim had scratched their assailant or somehow obtained the assailant's DNA during some form of a struggle, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And in a case where someone sneaks up behind someone, puts a gun to the back of their head, and executes them, would you expect to find anything underneath the victim's fingernails?
No, there was no struggle.
And was there any evidence that you were aware of a struggle?
No, sir.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Well,
Okay.
are you aware of any request by the defense in this particular case to test the fingernail scrapings collected by the coroner? Or I guess I'm assuming a fact. You never answered that question.
I'm not even going to bother to check that one.
Are you asking or withdrawing?
Withdraw.
Okay.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Chestnut?
I'm all done, Your Honor. Thank you.
May this witness be excused.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're not going anywhere anyway, so you may step down. It's time for our recess, so we'll go to 3:20 unless you have something for, actually, we do have a little bit more to do, don't we? So let's go to 3:30. 3:30, ladies and gentlemen. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. 3:30. Our jurors have left the courtroom. Mr. Lewin, I roasted Mr. DeGuerin over the coals the other day for asking for an instruction in front of the jury, and I thought that could be a lesson to everyone. Yet you, feeling as offended as Mr. DeGuerin did in that moment, also asked for an instruction in front of the jury. Don't do that.
Understood, Your Honor.
Next.
Your Honor, I'm going to
Yes.
ask the court, here's the issue. The defense, the
The
court...
issue is you may not ask for instructions in front of the jury.
Understood.
I may not give such an
And,
instruction.
Your Honor, the court has already told the defense repeatedly that they are not to go into this area. They're not to imply that I did anything wrong, unethical, illegal, immoral against the code of ethics of a prosecutor by conducting this interview. They asked 4 times the same question. I objected all 4 times. You sustained it.
Yep.
Mr. Chesnoff's response to you sustaining the objection was to simply ask the question again. The last time, he literally had the nerve to get up and say, now naming me, isn't it true that Mr. Lewin is the one? Your Honor, it's a complete disregarding of your instructions and of your objections. Here's what I'm asking.
I'm not sure what exactly Mr. Chesnoff had in mind.
Well,
The objections. The jury does not, juries should not be considering questions, only answers. I've instructed them of that before. I'll instruct them again.
Your Honor, I would like the jury instructed, because this has been a theme, that there was nothing improper about me conducting this interview.
Oh, Mr. Lewin, now we went through this at great length. We've established your good ethics and character, but we've also established at the time I allowed this interview to come in over all of the defense objections, Sixth Amendment, Miranda, all of that. I assured them, don't worry, you still may challenge the circumstances themselves. It is the jury's decision what to believe about this interview and how much weight to give to the statements. Mr. Chesnoff is perfectly entitled to question all of those circumstances in the manner that he did. There's no reason for any instruction besides the instruction I will give.
Well, Your Honor, for the record, our position is there's a difference between, and the court's already told the jury this previously, this issue's come up. There's a difference between going through the circumstances, which they can do. That is different than either directly saying or implying, which is what they did right now, that that interview was improper. The court knows it's not. Now, when the court says, and again, Your Honor, even from the court, there's nothing whatsoever that I did that was improper, unethical, unprofessional.
No question.
So the idea that they get to sit up there and continually make this allegation that what I did was improper, they did not follow what your instructions were. What they did is they tried to imply to this jury that what I had done was some form of misconduct. And we all know it's not true.
You submit an instruction, I'll consider it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else? Now, subject, are you going to rest?
Yes, we are.
And Mr. Chesnoff said that he had a motion. So do the people rest? I'll let you rest formally in front of the jury. Do you, but now do the people rest upon the receipt of your exhibit?
Yes, before we do that, just for the record, Your Honor, People's 53, this was the stipulation of reading the testimony of Janet McKee, which we read on the record. Attached to People's 53 is the actual police report I read. I guess that shouldn't, the police report shouldn't go to the jury, so I'd ask to remove the police report from People's 53, or I could submit a new People's 53 without it.
May that be substituted, counsel, without objection?
Yes.
It shall be substituted.
Okay,
Yes.
the second one is People's 57C had attached to the back of it, I believe, a 2 or 3 page email from Mr. Miata that I would like to also substitute this one page, one without the email, instead of the one that's in now. It's 57C.
You don't want an email from Mr. Miata, do you, Mr. Chesnoff,
No,
Mr.
thank
DeGuerin?
you. Although I would welcome one when this is all over.
Thank you for that.
So-
That's a kind comment. So now let's substitute. No objection.
No objection.
Okay, I will give these to the clerk. Thank you. And the people formally would move in all of the exhibits indicated on our communication to the court, and we printed a list. We have the printed list? Yes, we can provide
You have printed a list of exhibits that you do not intend to
Correct.
submit,
so we-
and otherwise you are moving them into evidence. Are there specific objections beyond what I've already heard, Mr. DeGuerin?
And so it's clear, I think the court made it clear, but just to be clear, we're moving in all the people's exhibits except what's on that list.
I think that's clear now, if it wasn't before. Mr. DeGuerin, are there specific objections?
Well, I haven't had an opportunity to see what they're excluding now because we relied on things that were shown to the jury. If these are things that have been shown to the jury, I don't know that it's proper to withdraw them now. I know among those things that were shown to the jury and marked as people's exhibits were things that we relied on with the jury. So
Well, you're free to move to introduce those exhibits.
we do. We moved to introduce everything that came in during the jury trial as defense exhibits and prosecution
Now,
exhibits.
you can do that at the conclusion of your case, and the people have gone to the trouble of specifying what those exhibits are. I would like to see what exhibits you're referring to. So, but that's all right. I'm giving you till the close of your case. Anything? I'm going to. I don't take that as an objection to receive any of these objections. So the people's exhibits are received, except for the ones that are not moved into evidence. We'll reconsider at the defense motion any additions. Are there other motions?
Well, if you could just hold in abeyance the ruling on what they want to withdraw until we have a chance to review that and see what of those we want in.
No, you can. I'm gonna receive them, and I'll put the burden on you to change my mind. We've litigated all these things. You've had an opportunity to object. You've often objected. Without specificity, I'm not going to do that. I'm receiving them. Yes?
What you're receiving, that's great. I'm talking about what they're now pulling back.
Yeah, you can move to introduce anything that you think ought to go in that they're not moving in. And you can do that at the close of your case. Is there another motion, Mr. Chesnoff?
I have a motion for judgment of acquittal, Your Honor.
All right. Do you wish to argue?
Yes, very briefly, Your Honor.
Yes.
There's absolutely no evidence that Mr. Durst was at the murder scene when she was shot. The only evidence that they have is the note, and there's no indication that that means he was there when she was shot. There's absolutely no forensic evidence connecting Mr. Durst to the shooting. No weapon, no fingerprints, no DNA, no hair samples, nothing whatsoever. He also told people he was planning on visiting. People have testified that they expected him to be here. The people have also introduced evidence that he provided Ms. Berman with a substantial amount of money, which, according to them, would defeat their argument that there was a motive to kill. In fact, he'd just given her $50,000. Why would you shoot somebody a couple weeks after you did that? I submit with that, Your Honor.
Submitted?
Yes.
You're ready for me.
Yeah, I anticipated. Of course you're going to make this motion. Under 1118.1, I've given it thought. I've been reviewing the evidence, anticipating that you would make this motion. So I'm going to deny that motion, and I'm going to deny it for this reason. A jury could believe the bathroom confession, quote, "I killed them all," corroborated by slight evidence. In this case, the victim murdered by a gunshot wound to the back of her head. This also supports the firearm allegations and a finding of first-degree murder due to lying in wait because of the inference of surprise, and thus also that special circumstance.
Your Honor, may I interrupt you? I
Yes.
apologize. Because
Yes.
I was going to address the lying in wait separately,
Go ahead.
but since you have jury instruction 728, first one is he concealed his purpose from the person killed and that he waited and watched. There has been absolutely no evidence that he waited and watched for an opportunity to act. Their theory is he just showed up as expected by her and shot her. There's nothing to suggest that he was hiding, other than the fact that they have a theory that because of the way she was shot, it means that someone was hiding. But that's not the case.
Right, and so hiding has a legal meaning that's a little bit different. This idea of lying in wait. I went into this at some length at the time of the holding order, describing what the case law was on watching and waiting. And it is an unusual special circumstance in some ways. Perhaps the use of that language obscures its meaning, but I did elaborate on it at that time, and I'm confident that it can be inferred from these circumstances. Now, as to the special circumstance of witness killing, I do believe that is circumstantial. If believed, it is proved first by the admission to Nick Chavin that was his motive. Quote, "It was her or me." That coupled with evidence that Susan Berman was a witness, and that would come from evidence that Susan Berman told Nick Chavin that Durst had confessed to her. Proof by preponderance that Mr. Durst murdered and dismembered Morris Black because he became aware of Durst's identity and flight is powerful corroborating evidence of that special circumstance. So,
Your Honor, I would just add that, and I know the court covered this originally, I don't know that Mr. Chesnoff is familiar with California law. This lying in wait special cert discusses concealment of purpose, which is what happened here. That's what the evidence shows. Secondly, with respect to the court and us making an instruction on this issue, I don't know if the court remembers, but early on in the trial, we had this same argument, and the court ended up instructing the jury. It went back and forth because they brought this issue up previously during this trial, meaning not in 2020, in 2021 here, and the court actually ended up instructing the jury. We had submitted one, and in the end, the court ended up saying something to the effect of that there was nothing improper about me conducting the interview, and that improper or unethical. And if you recall, the defense did not want you to use the term unethical, and in the end you did, because obviously if you don't use it, there's inference that somehow it wasn't ethical. And I will
would you
say,
like me to repeat that instruction that I already gave?
Yes.
That's sufficient.
Yeah, and I do want to say to the court, Your Honor,
Yes.
it is not my, and I do apologize for getting, as the court is aware, I've spent almost 30 years at this job. My ethical reputation is impeccable. I've told counsel from the start of this case, make the arguments you want to make the legal statements you want to make. But if you're going to get up and you're going to call me unethical or you're going to infer it, you might as well say something about my mother or my daughter or my wife, because that's the response you will get. As a prosecutor, that's all we have.
All right. Well, you shouldn't have to even say that.
Well,
Your Honor, I do need to say one thing.
Go ahead, Mr. Chesnoff.
In 40 years, and probably Mr. DeGuerin was, how many years?
57.
So that's 97 between you.
97 between us. None of
Yeah.
us have ever been in a case where the district attorney conducted all the interviews. So that created a unique situation which we question about because we are trying to establish what the circumstances are when a witness is interviewed, whether it's before trial or during trial or in an interrogation room.
Listen, I
That's why we
sustain the objections to the suggestion that he, because the detective hadn't seen it before, that there's something wrong with it. It certainly is unique and extraordinary, but there's nothing wrong with it. So I sustain the objections, but I understand why you're going for it. I think Mr. Lewin had a tremendous advantage in this case by his choice to do that. It was a very interesting choice and a luxury for a DA to be able to do it. I think DA should be able to do that more often, but here they have the resources to do that. So there you go. Recess.
Just so I'm clear
Yeah.
on that, Judge.
Yeah.
We're still allowed to argue that he beat us there, and that he beat us there with the purpose of getting to Mr. Durst before his lawyers did.
Well, if there's evidence of that, I don't think we heard evidence of that, did we?
Well,
Yeah.
we can certainly suggest that he got there before a lawyer did. That's a fact.
Yeah, okay.
And he was going to be seeing lawyers afterwards, and it was early in the morning. I mean, all those things can be presented. If the court is instructing us about a punchline, that's one thing. But the
Punchline?
fact, meaning they did this on purpose, like Mr. DeGuerin was just saying.
Well, the
think that-
purpose is the purpose is to speak with him, sure, but I think
And the
that
proof
what-
was in the proof was in the pudding, because once he saw a lawyer, he didn't talk to him again.
All right, but there's nothing wrong with it. I think this underscores the importance of me giving that instruction.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And you must argue within the evidence.
And Your Honor, I'm just going to say there'll be no objection, as the court pointed out, if they want to make the argument that I interviewed Mr. Durst did not have a lawyer there, Mr. Durst could have had a lawyer there, and I will certainly respond. Where they cannot go is talking about, I beat his lawyer there, what my purpose was in doing it. They cannot do that. If there's no evidence, it's not a reasonable inference from the evidence, it's an improper argument. They can talk about the circumstances of the interview, which is what the court has said. They cannot talk about the purpose or any nefarious intent they want to infer.
Okay, we can hash this out another time. It's 3:20. We're doing our break. Our reporters need a break, please. Recess.
Did you, I missed it, did you rule officially on the 11/18?
Yeah, I denied it and then gave the reason. Thank you.